It's a great pleasure welcoming you all, friends of Christ, onto the second episode of our journey. A journey that we started in the first episode, introducing ourselves to the book or to the Encyclical of Pope Francis entitled Laudato Si. And it is Laudato Si, mi Signore, praise to you, my Lord. In that first episode, we had a general introduction to the common home message that Pope Francis has for all of us, that is geared towards changing our disposition towards the environment and how we harm our common home. This episode is the second one, and we are dealing with the first chapter of the book. And I warmly welcome you onto this episode. You all friends of Christ who have joined hands in spreading, in propagating the message for care for our common home. And I am your humble servant, Peter Maulolo Tofa, leading you through this second journey as well, the second episode of the Encyclical message, Laudato Si Misi. What is happening to our common home? That is the question Pope Francis asks as the title of the first chapter. What is happening to our common home? There is a tendency to believe that we want to be well endowed with information. That is why we are asking the question, what is happening to our common home? But that is not the reason. The reason is that we want to be painfully aware of the things that are happening to our common home so that we deduce ways of curbing the way we harm our land. That is why the Pope asks the question, what is happening to our common home? What do you think is happening to our common home? What do we also think is happening to our common home? What do we collectively think is happening to our common home? The goal is to be painfully aware of the problems so that we can find ways of going about them. So ask yourself personally what you think is happening to our common home. Whilst I point out the few things that Pope Francis identifies to be happening to our common home. Let's look at pollution. Pollution in some three different forms: land pollution, water, and air pollution. So there is rapidification. That is one very important point the Pope identifies in the encyclical Rapidification. He says that there is slow pace of biological evolution, and that contrasts with our production and consumption as humans, because we have increased in number, and the way we produce and consume things is faster than a slow pace of biological evolution. Simply means that the way we produce and consume things is faster than how things grow and how nature also provides for us. That puts a lot of pressure on nature. But God endows us with brain, sense, to go about our living. We have put a lot of pressure on the land, and it is in turn causing us problems. These are the problems the Pope identifies in the first chapter, and that is what we are dealing with. Let's look at land pollution. Let's look at how waste is all over the land, causing harm to plant life, causing harm to our human life as well. Land pollution. There is a heap of waste all over the land. It's because of throwaway culture. Throwaway culture is that we use the things and we throw them away. We lack the sense to recycle the things and get another new thing out of the used ones. That is a sense of recycling things. There is a wonderful recycling method in it. Herbivores give food to carnivores. Carnivores give food to plants. Plants also give food to herbivores, and herbivores to carnivores. And in that cycle, very wonderful. It is an analogy for us to use. So we can also go about recycling things and help in preserving our land. What is happening to our common home? One is waste all over the land pollution. The second thing I would like us to talk about is water, the issue of water. Water is polluted. Our water bodies are deteriorated. We no more have good drinking water. We don't have water for domestic use also, because we farm along water bodies, and chemicals we use in our farmlands cause harm to the water bodies. We use chemicals in fishing. These chemicals we use in fishing cause harm to aquatic life and to potable drinking water. This affects not the rich, it affects the poor. Remember, it is the rich that engage in these things. Another thing that is happening to our common home is the issue of water. What about air pollution? It's also there. Exhaust fumes from those big vehicles and from industrial activities, they cause the air a lot of harm, and causing harm to human respiration and all that. Another thing is air pollution. It's also happening to our common home. Rapidification is there. That is why we cause a lot of pressure. We mount a lot of pressure on the land, causing harm to ourselves in turn. So how do we go about them? I said in the beginning that we are not looking for information so that we'll be well endowed with information and just boast that we have knowledge. But we want to know so that we personalize the pains, we personalize the agonies that we find ourselves in, and to prepare ourselves to look for ways in curbing the way we harm our land. Let's look at that important and wonderful recycling method in nature and adopt it. Let's look at how we have to go about the things we do, which we don't do well. We go about them in a sensible way, and we shall live and have a better living and a good life to enjoy. But let's look at global inequality that the Pope stresses. Global inequality. Global inequality is there because there is the poor and there is the rich. All the problems that we are talking about that they are happening to our land, they in turn affect the poor more than the rich, because the rich are those who can afford expensive treatments in the big hospital. When they fall sick, they are those who have better ways of living. Their standard of living is high, and they try to prevent themselves from all these harms that they predominantly caused to the land. The poor are those who do not have expensive treatment centers to go, so they suffer. That is global inequality. Even though climate is a common good for all of us, rain falls for both the rich and the poor, sun shines for both the rich and the poor, but the harms that we have collectively caused to the land, the poor suffer the most. That is what is global inequality. Global inequality is there, even though people propagate the message of classlessness. In this case, the poor suffer all the pains that emerge from our own doings, things that we have caused the land. So that is what is happening to our common home. The message in the first chapter is clear. We want to know the things that are happening to our common home so that we deduce ways of curbing the way we harm our land. There are weak responses to all these problems. That is why they persist every now and then. We lack good governance to enact laws to stand against the things we are doing, and we lack appropriate governance to enforce laws. There are laws that are there. Are they enforced? If people are harming the land, cutting down trees without replacing them for their own benefit and all that, how do we respond? Law enforcement agencies, how do they go about them? Is it about bribery and corruption? When somebody is caught in these acts and the person pays something to the law enforcement agents and the person is freed, are these the things that we are doing? Let's look at all of these things and go about them appropriately. So the weak responses are these things that I have spelled out: the good governance, enacting laws, enforcing the laws to regulate our disposition towards the land and all that. These are weak responses to the problems we are facing. So this is the first chapter, and the second episode I have journeyed with you on in this journey. So I would like to meet you third episode so that we'll talk about the next the next chapter. That is the gospel of creation. The gospel of creation gives us a religious dimension of our disposition towards the land, and you wouldn't like to miss that episode. Subscribe to this channel, Friends of Christ channel, and you will see more updates. And when you tap on those updates, you are going to join me in the second chapter, which is the third episode of this journey. I am a friend of Christ. I am an advocate for Laudato Si, an advocate for care for a common home message of Pope Francis. I wish that you are also a friend of Christ and an advocate for the care for a common home message. Imagine all of us are friends of Christ who are advocates for this message. We are really going to care for a common home indeed. I thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that we are going to change our disposition towards the land. We are all friends of Christ because Christ really tells us we are his friends. Thank you, and see you on the next episode.